Okay, let's introduce, oh, hi, Steve, I didn't see you down there.
I just snuck in.
Steve Casey, so it's our all-night jock at KRUX in the early 70s.
Baby DJ.
Larry Mack, Gary Mack, who was Larry Dean, and you worked at KRUX too before.
I worked at KRUX.
Yeah.
I had 2 tours of duty at KRUX and loved them both.
Tommy Wright was our 6 to 10 p.m. jock in, what was it, 69 and 70?
Yeah, I did mornings for a while when he left.
Dennis King was our midday jock. Way down on the end here, I'm going to go around. Mitch Heller, greatest weekend jock in America. He was so good. When I left KRUX to go to KTSA in San Antonio, they put him on in my place in the mornings. That's how good he was. John Sebastian, you have a mic, John? We can already tell the story here. John went under the name of Gary Stevens at KRUX. And there's a little bit of a story behind that because the general manager over at KRIZ at the time was a guy named Gary Stevens. He was quite a famous jock in New York way back in the day. And it drove him crazy because he would go out with a salesperson to go on a sales call or go to an agency, and they'd say, "Oh, hey, I heard you on the air last night." And he'd have to say, "No, that wasn't me. That's a jock who took my name over at KRUX." John, you were sued actually by Gary, weren't you?
That's how I met Gary. Yeah, I was actually sued for using his name. And of course, as you know, we'll get to this story maybe later, but you guys eventually hired me at KRIZ, and one of the criteria for me being hired was that I had to change my name.
That's right. And the rest is history. Who else is here? I can't see. Gary Elmar. Bob, the second Bob Shannon was on the, his name is now John Driscoll, his famous voiceover guy in Los Angeles.
And we met because I was suing him.
The name game.
This guy stayed awake for, what was the record? I think it was 292 hours, and you did about
7 days.
Yeah, I think you did like.
I was psychotic.
It's funny because we talked about George Lasley, who was the general manager, sweetheart of a man, and he called me in when Bob was in hour number 185 or something or other, and said, "Todd, I don't want you giving him any drugs to keep him awake or anything like that." And I said, "Oh no, Mr. Lasley, we wouldn't do anything like that." And then he continued, "But if he gets within 5 hours of the record, you pump him so full of shit he can't see straight. And make sure he breaks the record." Casey Kennedy, I never worked with you. You were in the later 70s, weren't you? What year?
75 to 81.
I like so many. Is this on? Yeah. I like so many, or so few, did 2 tours of duty at KRUX. First of all, 1969, when Al McCoy left the station, I stepped into his shoes. And let me tell you, they were huge shoes to try to fill. I knew the KRUX at that time. Then I left Phoenix for a while, came back, did weekends for Todd at KRUX, and as Todd mentioned, when he left the station, went to San Antonio, I was lucky enough to get promoted to become the morning man. So again, Little Bush, Big Redwoods, I had some big shoes to fill, and I tried to as best I could. And then when Todd and the crew came back from San Antonio to KRIZ, that horrible place over in Buckeye Road, I got another chance to work with the crew. So just 2 stints at KRUX and one stint at KRIZ. I left the business in the mid-70s. And I'm one of those nasty real estate development types, having a great deal of fun these days.
Yeah.
Well, one interesting story is that I actually had 2 stints at KRUX too, and Todd may have forgotten this, but I came back to KRUX in 1973 for 3 days. And that's when Todd and Gary Stevens called me and said, "Come on over, we want to talk to you." That's when we changed my name to John Sebastian, and since then I've
been fortunate enough to work in LA 3 different times, and Boston and Chicago, and a lot of major markets around the country. But the most important thing I want to say is that I feel like my time at KRUX was my education. It's where I really learned how to do radio, at the heels of Todd Wallace and Jay Stone and John Driscoll and some of the best people in the business. All of which went on to very successful careers around the nation. So you know, I've been blessed with my career, and I really owe it all to that lucky break of being able to come to Phoenix and work at KRUX.
First off, it's a real honor and a pleasure to work with the people that I grew up listening to, and I eventually worked at the station I grew up listening to, so it's very much an honor for me to be here. I did afternoon drive on KRUX from 76 to 78, and just a couple of us from that era. But I was kind of privileged as a child. My mom was a partner of the patent agency, advertising agency back in the day. And they had the KRUX, KTKT advertising and PR account. They were in the old Coronet Hotel at that time. I remember I was, I suppose either Saturday or Sunday night, I think I was with either Mitch Heller or Phil Kelly or something, and you came in. He went to the bathroom, and he let me start a record. You happened to come in the back door, and that was it for me. I was never allowed to come back in. It was truly an honor and a pleasure, and I wouldn't have come back for any other reunion except for KRUX. It was truly, it was the motherlode of great top 40 radio in our time. It was the soundtrack to our generation. Would you agree with me on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a St. Mary's boy, Channing Frye. And I remember in the grade school down there in Van Buren and 2nd Avenue, when I was very young, there was a guy sitting on top of a flagpole in a 57 Ford Fairlane. Lonesome Long John sat in that thing for 8 months. Wow. And I was out at the corner of the playground at St. Mary's there, looking up, and all I could figure out was, 1, where does he go to the bathroom? 2, how does he get food? And 3, does he get paid to do this? And I think it was K-Hat Rayota promotion that he did. But that got me sparked in radio, and ever since I was a young boy, I always said, that's what I want to do. The only thing that I wanted to say that I do respect both stations. I think Chris had a little more play left to the guys, but it was almost like a college station atmosphere. KRUX, I think, was more of a polished, professional presentation. They both had their place in the Valley. They both did a lot of great radio. I had the pleasure of learning some formatics there, and then going on to work with Bart Sell with MIQ Miami. Then in Chicago, I worked with Larry Lujak at WCFL, and then I worked with Real Don Steele at KANG2. And I ended up at KZLA doing mornings and getting a call from Robert W. commenting on my book, and also saying he knew I was doing promos for NBC. He says, okay, now get the hell out of radio. He says, you know, you can't do any better than what you got. He says, now's the time to parlay it. And I did. Went into voiceovers, and I have a voiceover site, Voiceover America, and I was one of the first guys that got into websites and email and ISDN, and basically I have a portable studio, so I do it out of a hotel room with an Indian blanket. It sounds just like that.
I had just come from New Mexico. I graduated college, and I met him, and he said there was an opening. He didn't have one at his radio station. He said, but go try that radio station out in Glendale. They'll take you. So I drove all the way from Scottsdale after I went home. Drove all the way to Scottsdale, and I met the program director. I don't remember who it was, but it was during the transition time when just before it became all news. And so I met the first program director. He said, yeah, he says, do you have a first-class license? Yeah, I have a first-class license. Because you had to be there when the guys did not have them. So that was like, I'd be on the air from 10 to 2, he said. Then I'd have to hang around there from 2 to 6, because the guy after me didn't have them. And then I got the surprise, because as soon as we did the first few shifts, a guy by the name of Bob Rondo, I don't know if you guys remember him, he became the program director of the News and Information Service. And so all of a sudden, the disc jockey job was gone, and there I was on the air doing news for that 12, 14 months of hell, working with Lotus Communications, who owned the station at the time. And then after that died an early death, stayed there, came back on the air with the rock and roll, with Top 40 in 76, I think. I was there till 1978, where I made a big mistake, went over to KUPD for about 9 months. And then I was lucky enough to go back to KRUX and stayed there till the bitter end, 1981. And I think I'm the only one from the 80s, right? I think I'm the only one from the 80s. And it was a lot of fun, and I had the privilege of following all the great disc jockeys that you all listen to and things like that, and had a lot to live up to. It was unfortunate that, FM took over. I was on the air, and there was a guy by the name of Kurt Powers, Captain Kurt, who was at Quiz, and we would talk back and forth. We'd listen to each other's shows on the EBS monitor. I don't know if you guys remember EBS alerts or the McDonald's when they first introduced the Big Mac. And they had that thing where it was 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, on a sesame seed bun. Well, we were screwing around, and I'd be talking to him, and I said, well, you got to say it this way. And I didn't think that he would say it this way. This is what you call the power of suggestion. And he goes, they were doing the contest, first would win Big Mac, and he goes, if you can say 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, heroin on a sesame seed bun, it went over Quiz. And honest to God, I almost fell off the chair at KRUX. And I thought for sure Kurt was going to get fired, and nobody called. Nobody called him at all. And he said, you so-and-so, he said, you made me say it. I said, no, just the power of suggestion.
Lucky to be alive from the opportunities that were afforded me by Mr. Wallace and crew. I'd had about 5 years experience under my belt starting in 1966 before I had the opportunity to come to KRUX in Phoenix. Disc jockeys are known for temper tantrums, bruised egos. You have 2 choices when that happens to you. You can walk in, call everybody every name in the book, or you can go home and start sending out air checks. And I'm going to get out of here, I'll show them. Little beknownst to you, there's 200 people outside the door wanting your job and would work for free. The next thing I know, I'm going to lunch with Jay Stone, who's explaining to me in great detail the intricacies of the Top 40 KRUX format. The what's and the whys, why this is done here, why that's done there, why this is over here. And John hit it right on the head earlier. Never being in a major market until then, I had the opportunity to learn why. I had the opportunity to figure out that not only was my chosen career field my opportunity to go nuts, play records, have fun, and get paid for it, but it was also a very much of a learning experience. That's where it started to come together, and that is where I first learned the level of the ferocity and the intensity of total competition in Top 40 radio in any given market back in that era of time. People you hated when you were on the air, you hated the ones at the other radio station, somehow you remained friends for life. You know, it was just an incredible trip. Went on from there and went to work for Paradise Unified School District, retired 5 years ago, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm ready for the next reunion. Thank you, and it's amazing how many people remember us guys. Thank you.